Good morning, Year 3, and this is now our fourth lesson of outdoor learning this half term. And as I'm sure you know, we are going to be carrying on learning about fossils and extinct animals. So I'm just going to share my screen so that we can get started. Excellent. Okay. So last week we looked at fossils and we discussed what fossils were, and we particularly looked at the process by which a fossil is formed, which is called fossilization. And we also discussed that it takes at least 10,000 years for a fossil to be formed. I really enjoyed looking at your work this week, so well done those people who were able to put the different stages of fossilization in order. Just to recap from last week, we have a living creature that then dies, and as we discussed, the soft parts of the living creature's body will start to decay, just leaving the harder parts. This then gets buried, and then over time, layers of rock build up. Eventually, what happens is the bones or the shell get worn away and replaced by minerals which seep in. And finally, layers of rock erode, usually by wind or water, and expose the fossil. And then people are able to discover the fossil and find out what happened thousands of years before to these creatures. So today you are going to become a fossil detective. All right. So people called paleontologists look at fossils to study life on Earth from a long, long time ago. So you're going to be a kind of paleontologist today, trying to find out about life from a long time ago by looking at fossils. Here's a picture of a fossil for you. As you can see, it's about 25 centimetres in length. I'm going to give you 20 seconds just to consider these questions. What can you see? Are there any shapes or patterns? What can you tell about an organism from this fossil? And remember, an organism is any living thing. So this could be a plant or an animal. All right. And is it a part of an organism that you recognise? So, for example, often when people find fossils, you don't find a full fossil of a skeleton, for example. You might just find a part of it. So you might find a animal's fossilised ear, for example, the bones from just the ear of the animal, or you might find the stalk from a plant. Okay, you might not find the entire fossilized skeleton of an animal. Okay, so could this be a part of an animal or a plant that you might recognize? So I'm going to give you 20 seconds just to have a little think about what you are looking at and whether you can see any shapes, patterns, and what can you tell from this fossil. Well done, Year 3. So these are some of the things that I was thinking about. So I had a close look and I counted the kind of number of ridges. All right, you can see there's kind of like a ridge running along, and I counted that there were kind of 12 ridges running along the top there. I also looked really carefully and I thought, wow, the ridges at the front of the fossil are much longer, but less deep. So they're narrower, they're more shallow, less deep. Whilst at the back, the ridges are shorter, but much deeper. So the fossil goes much deeper. I was also looking at maybe the colours of the fossils, and maybe I can see that it's slightly darker on top where the ridges are, and down the side there's a browny yellow colour. And then I started to think about, what does this look like? Could it be a fossilized piece of coral? Because I was thinking about the way coral moves under the sea and the kind of wavy aspect of it, possibly. Or some other sea plant, I was thinking. Then I looked at it again and I was like, maybe it could be like the bark of a tree, like the imprint from the bark of a particular type of tree. The horn of an antelope, and you might be thinking, oh, it doesn't really look like a horn, and you're right. But so the antlers. But I was thinking if there were ridges on those antlers, and that got imprinted into a fossil, maybe. And then I was thinking it could also be a tooth from a herbivore. And I will explain more why I might think some of these things. So those were just some of my initial thoughts, and you might have had some completely different thoughts. And the good thing about being a detective is that you don't need to be right or wrong, you just need to suggest things. So our activity today is I'm going to give you, a bit later, I'm going to give you 3 pictures of fossils, and you're going to choose one, and you need to do a detailed scientific drawing of that fossil. So with the scientific drawing, you will also do labels. So as you can see, I've labelled the ridges of my fossil. I've talked about the colour of the fossil. I've talked about the different size of the ridges, and I've talked about the grooves along the side of my fossil. So I've just labelled all the bits that I can see from my fossil. So that is a detailed scientific drawing. Just a hint, one of the things that you could do for your detailed scientific drawing is what I would do is I would do the outline first and then fill in the detail. And then if you would like to, then to give it more shape, you can colour it in. Okay, but I would use a pencil, do the outline, then the detail, and then if you think it will add anything, you could use some colours to shade it in to show some of the different parts of it. So the second thing we are going to do is then do a scientific description of the fossil. So I'm going to describe those ridges. So I've said there are about 12 ridges. These ridges are longer at the front, but shallow. And the ridges at the back are shorter, but deeper. The fossil is a dark grey on the ridges, but a yellowy brown colour underneath. And there are shallow grooves along the side of the fossil. I would also write something about the length of the fossil, which I forgot to write here. So I would say that the length was around 25 centimetres long. So that would be my scientific description of the fossil. And finally, this is the interesting bit. What organism do you think the fossil is of, and why do you think this? So I gave a few suggestions at the beginning, and you might have some other ideas of what my fossil is. But I'm going to go with the fact that I think the fossil is a tooth of a herbivore, for example, a woolly mammoth. And then I'm going to explain why I think this. So I think this because it has ridges in the top of the fossil. If we look at teeth used for grinding vegetation, they are large with ridges on them. This fossil is around 25 centimetres long, which means it must belong to a large animal. Okay, so I've used my knowledge of animals that I know that are alive now, for example, an elephant, or even ourselves. We've got teeth at the back of our mouths that are used for grinding, and if you look, they've got kind of ridges on them. So that's why I was thinking it might be a tooth. I don't know if I'm wrong or right. Okay, so that's, you can, it's whatever you think your fossil is. But you need to say what organism it is. So it could be an animal or it could be a plant. And you need to say, why do you think this? So you need to give a detailed explanation of why you think this. So these are the 3 fossils that I'm going to give you to look at today. In a minute, I would like you to pause the video, and then you can go and get yourself a piece of paper and a pencil. And I would like you to do a detailed scientific drawing of one of these fossils. So you need to choose one. And it could be the one that you think you know what it is. It could be the one just that interests you. It could be one that you think is the prettiest. You can choose it for any reason that you like, but I'd like you to choose one. And I'd like you to do a detailed scientific drawing and label it. Okay, so label, what can you see? Okay, I would like you to pause the video now and do the first activity. Excellent, Year 3. So you should now have a detailed drawing with labels of your chosen fossil, which is one of these 3 fossils. The next thing that I would like you to do is I would like you to do a scientific description of the fossil. So what does it look like? How big is it? You've got some measurements at the bottom of the screen there. What can you see? What do you think it is? Have you got ridges? Do you have anything that looks like bones? Do you have different colours? Okay, so a really good scientific description of the fossil. So I would like you to pause the video now and do the second activity, which is to describe your fossil. Excellent, Year 3. So now you should have a labelled picture of your fossil and a scientific description of your fossil. And this is where it gets interesting. So now what I would like you to do, the third and final activity, I would like you to have a think, what organism do you think the fossil is from? So do you think it is a plant or an animal? You might want to think about whether it was in the sea or on land. And I would like you to have a guess, what type of animal do you think it was? Or plant, animal or plant. And the most important thing is, I'd like you to explain, why do you think this? Why do you think it is the fossil that you say it is? And you need to use all the evidence that you have got so far. So from your scientific description and from your diagram. Okay, I would like you to pause the video now and do the third activity. Excellent, Year 3. So now you should have a detailed scientific picture of one of those 3 fossils that is labelled. You should have a detailed scientific description of that fossil, of what it looks like. And the third and most important thing, you should have had a guess at what organism, so what living thing, plant or animal, you think it was, and how do you know? Why do you think that? Well done, Year 3. And next week we'll have a little look at those 3 fossils and try and work out what they actually were. I am looking forward to seeing your work uploaded on Seesaw. Right, I will see you next week. Bye.